to answer your question about perseverance versus pivoting, I persevered for too long. I was pig-headed. I was stubborn. I was so determined to have this baby of mine, deliver what I thought and hoped it could deliver. I mean, I owned Gecko for 10 years and I didn't make money, outside of the salary that I paid myself. Gecko cost me money.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 115 of the Startup Playbook Podcast. I'm your host Rohit Bhargava, and each week I interview successful founders, investors, and subject matter experts on how they got started, the strategies they used to succeed, and their advice to current and future entrepreneurs. I'm delighted to have Sam Wood as my guest for this episode. Some of you listening may be familiar with Sam as the star of season 3 of the Bachelor Australia TV series, but outside of this, he's been a successful fitness entrepreneur for the last 20 years. He started Australia's first children's fitness centre, Gecko Kids, and now, alongside his gym, the Woodshed, is the founder of Australia's #1 at-home fitness app, 28 by Sam Wood, that has over 350,000 users around the world. We covered a range of topics in this interview, including balancing persistence with pivoting your business, how to find the right tech partner as a non-technical founder, how to identify your target customer, growth strategies, and how to find the right mix of channels for your business, the value of bootstrapping, finding work-life balance, and much more. Without further ado, here's my interview with Sam Wood. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to episode 115 of the Startup Playbook Podcast. I'm your host Rohit Bhargava, and delighted to have Sam Wood as our guest for this episode. A big welcome to all of you for joining us this morning. And for those of you that are joining for the first time, just wanted to give you a quick rundown of how this episode will work. So as per normal, Sam and I will do a one-on-one interview for the first 45 minutes or so, and then we'll switch gears and move to audience Q&A. So for those of you that are joining in live, there's a little Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen if you have any questions that you want to submit for Sam, and we'll do our best to try and get to as many questions as possible at the end of this episode. Also, finally, before we jump in, for those of you playing along at home, the hashtag for this event is Playbook Live. With that out of the way, Sam, welcome to the Startup Playbook Podcast, and thanks for taking the time to join us on this brisk Melbourne morning.
It is fresh. Good morning, mate, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, I was up nice and early just to make sure I had my head clear for our chat this morning, and I think it was 2 degrees, so very fresh in Melbourne this morning.
Absolutely, Sam. So for those of our listeners, both here and abroad, that may not be as familiar with you or your background, do you want to share a little bit about your story and what got you here today?
Sure. So where do you start? I guess the majority of people know me as I was the Bachelor here in Australia in 2015. But since then, people know me more for my health and fitness resume, I guess. I've been in the health and fitness industry for 20 years. I've been doing personal training since I started my uni degree way back in 2001, and have had various businesses in the health and fitness space, from my own personal training studios to launching Australia's first ever kids gym. And now what most people know me for is my online health and fitness program, which is called 28 by Sam Wood, which in the last, we were 4.5 years old, and we're coming close to having 500,000 people do the program in 4.5 years. So it's been a crazy roller coaster. And as crazy as the last 4.5 years have been, I genuinely feel like we're just getting started. It's exciting times.
Absolutely. Very exciting. Very keen to sort of dive in with you with all of the various businesses that you've been involved in. One of the things that I've been really fortunate to have on the podcast is successful entrepreneurs as well as investors. And one of the common themes that has come up time and time again is almost this obsession that particular founders have with a mission or a problem that they're trying to solve. And that's pretty clear from a lot of the different businesses in the background that you've had over the last 20 years or so. But doing my research and sort of listening to some of your previous interviews, I think you mentioned earlier that when you were younger, you weren't quite sure specifically what you wanted to do. And just yesterday, I caught up with a founder who's in a very sort of similar position, really keen to get into a business, but isn't quite sure specifically where they want to sort of spend their time, energy, and focus. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that process looked like for you, from sort of not really knowing what you wanted to do to having such a clear sort of pathway, and kind of the mechanism evolves over time, but really going out and making fitness your kind of life's work?
Yeah, everyone's an expert in retrospect, aren't they? I think it's very easy to sit here now and say, oh, so easy when you're so clear and you're so passionate about things. But yeah, I was really lost early days. I actually, so I remember being completely confused in my year 11 and 12, having no idea what I wanted to do next. I applied to do a psychology law double degree at Tas Uni. I'm from Tasmania, and I got accepted into that degree. And I remember reading my acceptance letter and going, I don't even really understand what this degree is. It was kind of just choose this because you don't know what else to choose. So I deferred that acceptance or that start to that degree and went overseas for a year, and that really helped. I mean, I have a little 15-year-old now who is sort of always chatting to me about what she thinks she wants to do, and she's kind of big on thinking she needs to travel to really find herself, and I'm a big supporter of that. I think just from my own personal perspective, it always feels like everyone else has it so has it worked out. And I'm thinking a lot of my friends, because they knew what course they wanted to do and that they had it worked out, and I was the only one that was so confused, and I got frustrated by that. They knew they wanted to do medicine or commerce or whatever it was, but it doesn't pan out that way. So many of them got to 30 and then had to change because they didn't necessarily know. They probably weren't as sure as they thought they were. I think, particularly in today's world, I mean, 20 years ago when I was at uni, there was no such thing as an app. So how would I have known that I was going to end up in this app space? They didn't even exist. So I think it was a blessing that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think taking those couple of extra years, working in hospitality for my dad, traveling overseas, and trying to get a better understanding of what I liked and what I didn't like was really important. And, I just knew I loved sport, I loved fitness, and I loved people. And I was really curious naturally, and always gravitated towards working for myself. My dad's owned restaurants. I think the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree there. And so for me, it was always, I don't know if I can see myself sitting at a desk. I don't know if I can see myself working for other people. I love wearing runners and track pants. Let's see where I can end up. But once I started personal training clients in 2001, I very quickly worked out that was something I absolutely loved doing, and couldn't get enough of it. I guess the only thing for me was, after you do that for 6, 7, 8 years, 60, 70, 80 appointments a week, the turning point for me was, I love doing this, but I know I want to be a dad, and I don't necessarily want to be getting up at 5:30 a.m. every morning and working till 9 p.m. at night once I have kids. Because I'd see other trainers that had young families that I worked with at the studio, and that was a great frustration of theirs. They didn't get to spend as much time as they liked with their kids because they did this sort of crazy split shift of early mornings and late nights. And so for me, that was a key turning point. It was kind of, I love what I do, but how can I create some kind of independent income stream where I'm not doing this when I'm 40 years old?
So many different threads that I want to pull on over there.
Sure.
One of the things that you kind of mentioned is, it's so much easier to connect the dots looking back than it is when you're sort of in the moment in time to figure out how any of this sort of makes sense. But again, what you kind of mentioned, I think a lot of people would feel in a similar position. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I did a double degree in engineering and economics, and then trying to tell my Indian parents that I'm quitting engineering to start a fashion tech company is always a fun conversation to have. But I think a lot of that is really sort of being able to. There are just so many opportunities ahead of us. It's really important to sort of look outside and kind of follow different things and just try as well to find the right sort of fit for us, because you never know. But one of the things that you kind of mentioned, Sam, obviously kind of in the fitness space, was you mentioned in an early interview that you were branded quite early on as the kind of trainer for kids, and especially in an industry that's so competitive like fitness, I imagine it's really important to have a particular point of difference. How intentional was that sort of focus to I guess be branded as that? And I guess when you had developed that brand, how did you capitalize on that?
Yeah, I mean that was an accidental branding for sure. That was look, I think, yeah, I mean you're right. It is important to differentiate yourself in the health and fitness space. So many, particularly back then. I mean, every man and their dog was becoming a personal trainer at one point. The industry was almost becoming overpopulated with people graduating from these Cert 3, Cert 4 courses without necessarily having a career path. It was just, I didn't know what else to do. And I think for the first time ever, it meant clients stopped and thought before they made a decision. It was always kind of a trainer's a trainer. And then it was, oh, well, hang on, if I'm going to be paying that guy $80 an hour, what are their qualifications? How do they differentiate? And yeah, for me, it was a natural transition from doing lots of work with mums, building great relationships with families. And when you do that, and when you have such a strong rapport with a mum or with a dad, but typically with a mum, and then they get to know you. So, I mean, I had the most incredible clients that, they were inviting me away on family holidays with them. I was training mum, dad, and the 3 kids either together or separately. I'd be leaving the gym at 12 o'clock to go off and watch kids that I'd been training in their inter-school cross country to see if the hard work we'd done together was paying off and all this. It was a crazy time. And yeah, for me, that was, and then the more I got into it, the more I just was incredibly passionate about helping kids. And I mean, for me, it's always been this understanding that I love personal training, like absolutely love it. But the ceiling on it is you can only work with so many people a week. You typically see a client 2 or 3 times a week. You're doing 60, 70 appointments a week. So you can only see 30-ish clients. So that's a very small ceiling on the number of people you can impact. You might be able to impact them in a really significant way. But for me, it was always, how can I help more people? So Gecko, which was the first business where, I was a subcontractor, which is a great kind of hand-holding small business start for personal trainers. You have to pay your rent to your landlord, the gym owner, every week. And it's a great little stepping stone, I think, for PTs. But when I really stepped out on my own and launched Gecko, Australia's first ever kids gym in 2006, that was because I was really passionate about getting kids fit. I loved working with families, and there was an itch that needed to be scratched when it came to going right out on my own and sort of, diving in the deep end from a business perspective.
This is like a perfect segue to my next question, which is, I think every business, it's really important for them to have a really sort of engaged and sort of essentially loyal customer base that you obviously sort of went above and beyond in terms of building those relationships, beyond just training the kids. You were sort of attending different sessions to just make sure that the work that you were doing was making an impact in kind of the day-to-day performance or their sort of mental health and confidence. But one of the challenges, and you touched on the ceiling with that, especially in a services business where it's so relationship oriented, and from a business perspective, you're looking to expand and grow. One of the challenges are, how do you replicate and scale yourself and scale those relationships? And I imagine that's extremely difficult, not just doing that in other locations, but also expanding to different cities as well. Can you talk a little bit about what did that sort of process look like in terms of trying to grow Gecko as a business, and what are some of the challenges that you ran into?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was, everyone that experienced the one Gecko Centre here in Hampton, Melbourne, loved it. We had 400 kids enrolled, 6 birthday parties every weekend. We did incursions and excursions with schools. We launched Junior Gecko, a 3 to 5 year old developmental sort of fun, balance, coordination, motor skill program. And it was an absolute hoot, and I loved every minute. But then you've got someone always saying, Sam, you need to franchise this or license this or open new standalone locations. You know, there needs to be one of these on the other side of Melbourne, in Sydney, in whatever it was. And, you know, I agreed with them. It was just, how do you do that when this business was so Sam-centric? And so our first approach was to license the programming, the brand, the equipment, packaging it all up to existing gyms. So there was probably a 2-year, you know, lots of money spent, lots of lessons learned, not much profit, if any, made, experimenting, trying to work that out. And it just came with a whole bunch of challenges. You're trying to deliver or sell something to gyms when it's a natural question that they ask, like, why can't we just do this ourselves? Why do we need your program? So you have to sort of convince them why Gecko was so special from a programming perspective. But, you know, it's kind of something that they thought they could do themselves. So have a very high turnover of staff. So you go in, you set these things up. You know, we launched 20 of these over 2 years at different gyms around Australia, but the quality control was really hard because you might train up to great young trainers who you see a lot of yourself in, and then they move on and the program takes a real whack because of it. You know, like the equipment's kind of banged up and left in the corner of the gym, and the 2 trainers that you trained up no longer work there. And it's slow, and, you know, it's not an efficient exercise to jump on a plane and fly to South Australia and fix that. So, so that, you know, that what we were learning was, unless you've got someone who is the heartbeat of that program, where they've put their hard-earned money on the line and they've got skin in the game, it probably won't work. So we pivoted from a licensing model to a franchising model, and that was much more successful. So that was where you could really select someone that wanted to do that. They wanted that business to be their baby. They might be a ex-PE teacher. They might be a personal trainer looking to add a whole nother facet to their business. And that was much more successful, and that's where we ended up. But I mean, I absolutely think that my success with 28 is highly due to the amount of learnings, failings, lessons learnt with Gecko, because the whole point was, if only I could clone myself, and you couldn't. And in a weird way, now it's 2020, through this amazing technology capability that we all have with streaming videos and high-tech apps and all of these great SaaS platforms, we effectively sort of can clone ourselves. You know, there's no reason I can't deliver my videos and workouts and recipes into every home in the country with, you know, at the touch of a button, whereas you couldn't do that back in 2006 or 2010, or probably even in 2014. It's been a really sharp increase in what you can do over the last 6 years. And I definitely feel that, you know, we had the right program at the right time to be able to capitalize on that.
Speaking of kind of timing, what did that sort of process look like? So, you know, there's always this like balance between pivoting and persevering. So especially a business that's, you know, quote unquote working, it can be hard to go, well, actually this model itself isn't the most efficient way for me to scale. What did that process look like for you? Because I believe that you exited out of Gecko as well, and then sort of transitioned into 28.
Yeah, I did. So there was a point in time where I had my personal training studio, the Woodshed, Gecko, and 28, and it was just too much. And one of the brilliant franchisees, Kim, was smart enough to recognize that, and she approached me quite early on when I was sort of juggling all 3 balls, and said, look, Sam, you know, 28 looks like it's really taking off. The Woodshed's your baby. It feels like, you know, it's going to be really hard for you to run all 3. And I agreed with her. I thought it was really perceptive of her, and she approached me in a, you know, the most beautiful, perfect way. and she said, I would love to be the one to sort of carry the torch on and take Gecko. So she bought Gecko. She still owns Gecko today. She's doing great things with it. I think COVID has been very challenging for them, but I'm sure she'll bounce back. She's a real fighter. She's a real, she's a real entrepreneur, and she's going to continue to take that to the next level. But I mean, as I said before, I made a lot of, I learned a lot of things that have really helped with 28, but I got an investor on board who, like I said before, these strong relationships. He was a parent of one of the kids that I had trained, absolutely believed in me, probably as much as the business, but he'd seen what I had done with his son, who was a tennis prodigy, and wanted to be a part of it, and was just, him and his wife were absolutely incredible to me, and I'm still close friends with them to this day. But because he would loan the money to the business, I just kind of had the blinkers on. I would continually tip money into this business, probably trying to grow it, and it just wasn't showing the returns. But because it was investor money, I probably wasn't as careful with it as I should have been, and I had to pay him a whole whack of money back. So that was a really valuable lesson. I definitely persevered for too long. But I also am incredibly aware that all of those lessons have helped me run a more efficient, more successful, more profitable business with 28.
Absolutely. I think that whole feeling of persevering for too long is definitely something that I personally resonate with, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have experienced that at some point as well. So Sam, kind of shifting gears to 28, 28 by Sam Wood as well, the app. What did that process look like? So obviously, I take it that you're not a technical co-founder.
No.
I assume that, a lot of our listeners are in a similar boat. They have a particular insight or have, deep expertise or just a great idea, but might find it really challenging to know, what does that look like in terms of building out a tech product and finding the right people or the right sort of partner to help bring that vision to reality. What did that process look like for you in terms of sourcing and finding the right technology partner?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd had discussions, had discussions with various different people about how I would love to have some kind of online platform. I'd kind of looked at Kayla and Michelle Bridges and others and gone, I think what they're doing is incredible, but we have very different philosophies. And I do feel that if I could bring my philosophies to the, to a tech platform like that, it would have its own beautiful little place in the market. But at the same time, it's a very high risk when you don't have a profile. And that was always just stuff in the back of my mind. When I went on The Bachelor, I didn't go on The Bachelor to launch an online program. I went on The Bachelor to hopefully meet someone. And, it's the best thing I've ever done. I am now married to Snejana, and we have 3 beautiful girls, and I can't believe how it's all panned out. We kind of laugh at it and pinch ourselves. But and I was always, I was aware enough to go, this will probably be a good thing for Gecko and my gym, the Woodshed, and give us a bit of a profile. But what I didn't realize is just when, I had 160 Instagram followers before I went on the show. That's 160, not 160,000. We now have 1 million followers on our social platforms between Snej and I and the business. And, it's just totally exploded. And that kind of just opened my eyes to people coming with questions, Sam, I live in Queensland. What workout plan can you send me? And it became really obvious really fast that there was a lot of people out there wanting and needing workouts, and there were particular ways that I spoke or my philosophies on fitness that resonated with them. So it was about joining forces with a with a company that built websites, and we built the 28 by Sam Wood program. It took, I don't know, 6 to 8 months to put that website together. And we were really, it was kind of this culmination of everything I'd learned in the fitness industry at that point over 15 years, and understanding the barriers that hold people back. My personal opinion was so many of the programs that existed were really intense. The workouts were really long or really hard. It was about following these extreme diets where you deprived yourself of everything that you liked. And that wasn't my philosophy at all. I think being a bit older, having lots of experience working with a great array of clients as a trainer, I knew what held people back. It was time, it was money, and it was convenience. So 28 was 28-minute workouts. You could do them from home, quick, easy recipes, and not just giving people a program and then having it be this set and forget experience like so many of them are. Like even a personal, my big gripe with personal trainers is they're great with their client for the 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes. And then they don't get in touch with them until they see them again in the gym. There's no nutrition help. There's no motivation help. They don't follow them up properly, see how they pulled up from the workout. They don't make sure they're moving their bodies in between sessions. And it's a bit transactional. And so 28 was about helping these people all of the time, not just the 100, for the whole 168 hours of the week, not just the 2 hours a week that they were working out with them. So, that's how it all came about. We launched 28 on the 1st of Feb in 2016. And within 2 months, we had 5,000 subscribers. And that was kind of this beautiful realization that we hoped, and like deep down, I knew we had something special. But it was that reinforcement from people signing up and telling their friends about the program that, really got us excited.
Sam, just diving a little bit deeper into the tech, into finding the tech partners. One of the things that we were just speaking about before we turned on the mics was, especially for a lot of people that are building a product for the first time, their impression might be that, I just need someone to build a product, so a website or an app, and once it's built, that's it, and I can then sort of move on to marketing. But in reality, you're always going to have to update your product. There are always kind of different features or changes that you're going to have to make. I think one of the things that you mentioned was just being really conscious of wanting to build an in-house team for 28 as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what were some of the specifics that you looked for in a partner to help you with that transition, and how did you sort of focus on building that initial team out in-house?
Yeah, so we started out with a little web development company and me being sort of based out of my gym, and it was a bit clunky and disjointed. And it became really obvious really fast that we needed to do it, particularly with the early success, that it needed to be done better. And we wanted, we took stepping stones. We didn't jump from 2 people to 20. We took baby steps along the way. We did get our website outsourced to a company, but it was very much looking for a web development company that was able to be an extension of us and support us, and not just here's a great website, now you guys are left to your own devices. But at the same time, the plan was always to have this great website built and then have our web developers in-house. So that was kind of phase 1 from a tech perspective. And then phase 2, so for the first 2.5 years of my program, we were web only. But at about the 18-month mark, we recognized we needed an app. It couldn't just be a website. So we probably spent 3 months researching who our app developer was going to be. And a big thing for us was explaining to them from the start that we didn't want to have to be reliant to a third party long term, and ensuring that whoever we chose was going to be comfortable with that. So we probably got down to 3 top tier app developers with it here in Melbourne. And the probably the differentiator was the one that we ended up going with, and I'm happy to give them a shout out because they are absolutely brilliant. They're Two Bulls here in Melbourne. They've got an office in New York and Collingwood, and they are brilliant with apps. And they've actually got a Two Moos subsidiary company that does kids apps. They've built the Wiggles app and all this kind of stuff. They are phenomenal. And we explained to them from the start that we wanted our tech team sort of by the end of the build in-house, and were they comfortable helping us make those hires? And they're like, absolutely. Let us build you this $1 million masterpiece, but we absolutely understand that our monthly retainers to support that don't work within your ongoing, operating costs for your business model. We'll help you hire great app developers to continually add features at the same caliber in which we've built the original piece of tech. So, yeah, that's panned out to be a really good decision for us. And going from web to app, both Android and iOS, has been a game changer particularly from a customer experience perspective and a retention perspective. It's just a better connection to our 28ers.
One of my friends actually is the design director at Two Bulls as well, Andrew Chin, who's a great guy as well. So,
Andrew Chin made my app.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. There you go.
Guy.
I didn't know that. Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant.
That's awesome. So kind of speaking about, I guess, the transition then to building your team, building your in-house team as well. I think you mentioned you've got about 20 staff at the moment as well.
23 full-time staff now work on the program.
Amazing. And, again, I think one of the challenges that keeps coming up time and time again from companies as they start to scale and grow to a size of, a team from 3 to 20 to 50 to 100 is, really understanding, first of all, bringing in the right people, but then also understanding how do you sort of balance out the resources and decide where in the business to invest? Do you spend more money on marketing? Do you hire sort of more sales support? Do you hire more tech talent as well? Do you want to talk a little bit about, how did you sort of go about structuring that team, and I guess where you look to for advice or resources to help you understand how you should be sort of devoting those resources in the growth of the business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess it's been driven by two things. It's been finding the key senior people and making sure that they really had an input into building their own team. Finding the right CTO, the right CEO, the right CMO. That's probably been the big three for us, and then allowing them to have some real input, collaboratively with me to building that team, or collaboratively with me and the CEO, to ensure that this is why I need this type of person on this type of salary, and this is the business plan to this is what the business will look like once we achieve that. But I mean, the beauty of my business now is it's actually reached the point where there's probably one, maybe two more hires required outside of increased customer service. Customer service is probably the only thing that the more 28ers that we have, the more customer service staff we need. Everything else is almost, assuming these people all stay with the company, which I hope they will because they're brilliant, but is almost sort of set now that we really have reached that beautiful point of skyrocketing scalability. It's, but we reinvested a lot over the last 4 years to get to this point. It's not about pulling profit out of the business for the last 4 years. It was about digital marketing experimentation, building the right team. I mean, it was only 2 years ago that we only had 7 staff, and we had a lot of our marketing outsourced, SEO and, digital marketing spend and all that kind of stuff was outsourced. And we just felt that even though we probably had brilliant people working on our accounts, it was the frustration to me was we're probably paying a $15,000 a month retainer for a great digital marketing agency, and they're probably giving us 10 hours a week. Surely there is that same person that would like to work in-house on a similar-ish salary where we get their genius for 40 hours a week. And once you do that once, and it absolutely tells you what you hope it was going to tell you, you very quickly go, right, we've got to do this in every area of the business. From app developers to SEO experts or whatever it is, we had to bring everyone in-house. And yes, it costs you a little bit more to start with, and you go backwards before you go forwards. But once you start going forwards, you go forwards fast.
Yeah, I think especially at the early stages as well, it's really important to retain a lot of those learnings. From a marketing perspective, understanding what works and what doesn't, and why is as important as you mentioned, just having something that is kind of clicking or kind of the pace of operation. Speaking of kind of the learning that you get as well, with the launch of the product, I think it's really important to be sort of directionally correct in terms of what you're doing. Like, I think the overall thesis of 28 is, how do you sort of scale yourself and kind of scale your philosophy to allow you to expand that to hundreds of thousands of customers around the world. But sometimes getting that sort of particular messaging or understanding specifically what your demographic is, takes some evolution or takes some time to evolve. This podcast, for example, when I first launched this 4 years ago, I thought that I would start off with some local guests and then I would, expand out into international guests. But a lot of the early feedback was it's great to have a podcast with an Australian perspective and understanding of the Australian market. And having that feedback allowed me to really kind of hone in and double down on kind of that particular focus. I'm just wondering from a 28 perspective, what did that sort of look like in terms of the launch, and how crystal clear were you in terms of the demographic and the type of messaging and the branding that you use versus like the evolution of that once you got it into market and got some initial feedback?
Yeah, look, I always say that we didn't choose our market chose us. I spoke before about 28 was a culmination of my 15 years of experience in the industry and everything that I'd learnt and the barriers that held people back. But we very quickly realised that 28 was hugely popular with women, particularly mums. So workouts that you could do from home, family-friendly recipes, and then the types of workouts of HIIT, Pilates, yoga, all this kind of stuff that really resonated well with that audience. It's interesting. Our evolution has gone from women at home to now just being known as at home. We've gone from 98% female audience to about 90, and I think we'll probably continue to evolve and end up being 80-20. We'll always be definitely more weighted to women who love home workouts, great pregnancy program, postnatal program, family-friendly recipes. But there's been an explosion, I think, in the normalization, I guess, of digital fitness and home fitness, particularly during COVID. And I think people have identified that we have always specialized in that area. So have come to us because we kind of had the credibility already in that space. And that's just helped us help more people. And, whether it's corporates who are working from home for the first time and have loved this as an alternative to their gym membership, or more men that have tried the program because their gym's closed or whatever it is, we've seen a real growth just in the at-home brand rather than the mums at home or women at home. So that's been the evolution for us. But we kind of really early on worked out who our audience was, and we didn't fight that. We embraced that. All of our new features come from suggestions from our members, and they totally drive the tech evolution of the business.
Speaking of sort of growth strategies as well, I think one of the things that I know the listeners of the show love hearing about from success stories is, what are some of the strategies and tactics that you use to grow, particularly to a global audience base? And I guess, particularly timely with COVID as well, when you have this sort of external environment or situation that's sort of created for you. How do you sort of think about in terms of making the most of those particular situations or those kind of particular environments where, as you mentioned, the shift towards wanting to do at-home workouts, potentially through an app, is sort of skyrocketing? How do you, from a business perspective, capitalize on those type of opportunities as well?
Yeah, I mean, COVID specifically was a really challenging one. I mean, I own a gym, so, we had a really tough time and a bit of a stressful time, obviously negotiating and navigating our way through that. but that was kind of control what you can control, and don't that is what it is. Until the government says we can reopen our doors safely, there's not much we can do about it. So let's put our efforts and energies and ideas into 28 and what we can do. And for us, it was kind of twofold. There's hopefully some great opportunities out there to to accelerate our growth and help people, but there's also a great need to help people for free. So Snej and I launched free live workouts on our YouTube channel and Facebook on our Facebook page every morning, in particular, and sort of going back to where it all started, helping kids get active. One thing that I was really concerned about when this all started was how are kids going to stay as active as they need to when they've got no organised sport, no PE, they're schooling from home, they're snacking all day, staring at the laptop. That's their way of getting their lessons for school. And a lot of the time parents are at home working as well. They don't necessarily have the capability to facilitate the exercise, the activity. So it was very much, let's do workouts that are family friendly. Mum and dad can do it, kids can do it, singles can do it, couples can do it. And that really got a groundswell going. I mean, that wasn't a growth strategy. That was just the right thing to do at the time. And the feedback we got, the gratitude that we received was incredible. We had millions of people join us for live workouts over a 10-week period at 9 a.m. every morning, Monday to Friday. And I definitely think that helped our normal growth. And then it was just other opportunities to partner with people during this time. There's lots of businesses who wanted to look after their staff. There were lots of businesses that wanted and needed to look after their customers. And we were in a really unique position that we were probably the best placed program to be able to help with that. So it was having as many conversations with as many people as we could to strike up those sort of B2B partnerships or whatever it was.
So my background is in marketing and growth. And so I meet with a lot of startups that want sort of advice on how they should grow their business based on kind of limited budgets that they might have as well. Yep. And, I guess there's like two sides of, it's really difficult when there are so many different potential channels for you to reach your customer base to know where you should be emphasizing your sort of focus, energy, resources on things. Can you talk a little bit about what does that sort of structure look like from a 28 perspective in terms of, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got YouTube, you've got a range of different channels. How do you think about devoting different marketing spend or resources or kind of time across those different channels?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, that because I'd come from a bricks and mortar business, I was very much still in the mainstream marketing space, brand awareness, radio, newspaper, all of this kind of stuff. And I still think that all has its place, absolutely, but it's very hard to measure. The great thing about a digital business or a digital marketing plan is you can get a fairly to very accurate idea of what it's costing you per click or per customer or whatever it might be, whatever your metrics are. So you then have to work out, that's all well and good with each marketing channel in isolation, but how do they work collectively? Because they don't work in isolation. You sort of think that they do, and each of these channels will tell you, on Facebook, it costs you this many dollars to get a new member, and your lifetime value of that member is this, and does that work, or is it good money after bad? And then, then all the algorithms and capping, it's very, very sophisticated and but fascinating. Like, as a non-tech guy, I absolutely find it fascinating. But for us, it was the obvious place to start, and where most people start and where you should start is your Google, your Instagram, your Facebook. But you don't want to stay just, in those three lanes for too long. You need to diversify your channels. You need to look elsewhere. I don't really want to divulge what other channels that we've used that have been hugely successful, but I will say that we've gone from 95% of our spend being in 3 channels to now we spend in 13 different channels. And and make sure that we complement that with a smart amount of spend in brand awareness PR.
One of the really important bits of diversifying your kind of different channels or different growth strategies is just making sure that you are sort of limiting your sort of customer acquisition costs across various channels as well, especially when you're looking at sort of white space opportunities that your competitors might not be staying in. Yep. But overall, we've kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of fitness being a really competitive industry, not just from a 28 perspective, you're not just competing with other apps, but you're competing with, workouts on YouTube. You've got workouts on Instagram and those sorts of things as well. How do you sort of think about or approach your kind of point of difference, or just making sure that you're sort of staying ahead of the market in your own sort of unique way?
Yeah, it's always a balancing act, isn't it? Between, focusing on you and just, I think we probably focus on ourselves. We're very aware of what our competitors are doing and new players that are coming into the market, but we don't want to get, I guess, distracted by that we end up sort of changing our message reactively to what others are doing when our message probably shouldn't be changing. I think, we know that there's 6 million women in Australia alone, kind of in our sweet spot age bracket. And that's a lot of women that we can still be marketing to through various channels without having to worry too much about going into other markets or worrying about what our competitors are doing. For us, when you've got a SaaS business, your numbers are everything. And your probably most important metric is, what is my CPA to Ltv ratio, and if that is in a really healthy place, which ours would, I think, be probably the best in practice, then you've got a really good business. And as long as that's not wavering too much, you can see that there's enormous growth. I guess the thing for us is this normalization of at-home fitness and normalization of digital fitness means the pool of our potential members is just getting bigger and bigger. So for us, it is ensuring that we continually market to that ever-growing pool and investing lots of time, effort, and resources into listening to what our customers want to continually improve our churn, because a 1% movement on the churn dial is a total game changer for any sort of SaaS business. It's what does it cost to get a customer? What's the lifetime value? And then once they're in, how do I keep them? How do I give them what they need for longer to keep them, to keep them as a 28er for longer? And one of the stats that we're most proud of is we have, hugely high NPS score. We've got an NPS of 80. We've got, even when people leave the program, we get 4.3 out of 5 stars to a leaving customer, which typically tells us they're not leaving the program because the program didn't work. They're leaving the program because they achieved their goal or they just want to try something else. And we also get 50% of our monthly sign-ups from returning customers. So we have a really good returning customer ratio. So there's lots of good signs, but you don't rest on your laurels with churn. Everyone says, "Oh, what's the magic number with churn?" It's as low as we can get it. How do we get churn as low as possible and keep people as 28ers for as long as possible?
Yeah, and for those people that are listening that might not be familiar with the term, CPA is cost per acquisition and LTV is lifetime value as well. So you want to make sure that your cost per acquisition is as low as possible and your lifetime value is high. So that ratio just gives you more margin as well with your customers.
Yeah, depending on how you're wanting to run some people are happy with a CPA LTV ratio of 1 because they're pure, or even in the negative, less than 1 because it's all about growth and improving their database and they're not necessarily running their business for profit. We think there's a bit of a sweet spot, run for growth, drive your business with growth, but also with a bit of a profit lean, because you can use those profits to reinvest in your team and your resources and different marketing channels rather than having to get investment to do that. It just gives you a little bit more agility and probably stability. You feel like if you've got some profit sitting in there, you've got a bit more control.
Sorry, Sam, I think we just lost you for a bit
Oh,
there.
sorry, mate. Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying we make a deliberate choice to run our business sort of in that sweet spot between growth and profit, because having some profit in the business just gives us that freedom and flexibility to be able to pivot and be stable but agile from perspective, where we're not relying on investment money. We can use that profit to, invest it in ourselves, is what I was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Final few questions for me before we switch over to switch tack and move over to audience Q&A. So one is, I know that you have to my understanding, a national partnership with Bupa. Do you want to talk a little bit of, in terms of what does that sort of process and structure look like in terms of developing a partnership like that?
The Bupa thing's been absolutely incredible. Bupa for a while. It wasn't just a COVID discussion. We'd been in discussions with them for over a year about potentially what we could do together. And it all sort of came to a head through COVID, because it was a real time where they wanted their customers, and we wanted to help them do that. It was really just Look, I think the thing that I'm most proud of with Bupa is, that was a competitive process that they ran, and they chose us, and that's a real feather in our cap to go. There's lots of potential options in this online space, and a company of the size and the stature and the standing of Bupa chose us, and that's, Then the second part is it was executed, and the scalability of our program was proven, where so many members joined the program in a very small amount of time, and from a tech perspective, customer service perspective, execution perspective, it went off without a hitch. And that's your dream when you've got a business like this, that you're on that sort of precipice of fast scale. I mean, we've always been growing quickly, but when you grow that fast and it absolutely works the way you've always said it would work, and you hope it will.
Sorry, Sam. I think we're having a few connectivity issues.
Oh, sorry, mate.
No, that's all right. I think it's just one of the challenges with tech. It enables a lot of things, but creates its own set of challenges.
It does.
So Sam, final question for me, just mindful of time as well. One of the things that you mentioned in a previous interview, which is something that I think a lot of founders will probably relate to, and something that I would definitely relate to as well, is you mentioned that you were a real sort of workaholic, and you kind of put other kind of areas in your life kind of in the back burner. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, like now you have a family and you have 3 daughters as well. How do you sort of balance, find that balance for yourself in terms of, balance between your drive and your kind of passion for work with balancing sort of other areas of your life?
Yeah, look, I've got to be honest, and I'm sure if my wife was sitting next to me, she'd say I don't do a wonderful job at it, and she's right. That's the area I still need to improve in a lot. I need to improve in a lot of areas, but that's definitely one thing I can do better. Look, something I do better now is, if we set a milestone or KPI target as a business, we do reward ourselves once we actually achieve that. It was always, the old me was always, that's all well and good, but the second you hit that milestone, you don't really celebrate it. It's kind of, okay, what's next? You don't actually stop, think about how incredible an achievement it is, celebrate both with your family and with your team. My family and my team are kind of all one, but that's become really important, and a really sort of, I think it's good to stop and smell the roses and look back and be proud of your achievements as you go. It helps you enjoy the journey a lot more rather than just the destination. Yeah, it's something I need to work on. I mean, for me, I try not to take work home with me, unless it's family workouts or Snez and I creating content together. I try to not do this. I mean, I'm in my office at the moment just because I like to give my kids 100% of me when I'm with them and not have my phone or my laptop with me, and Snedge too. And I'm not very good at doing that. If I tell myself that's okay, I'll do a bit of both. I do both badly. Whereas if I leave my laptop here or and then come into the office or whatever it is, I tend to do things better and more authentically. So yeah, I'm always improving in that space, but yeah, kids teach you very, very quickly what's really important in life. And for the first time probably ever, I've realized that that's not work. Work is very important, but it's not number one.
On that note, Sam, thanks so much for that great discussion. We're just going to shift over to audience Q&A now.
Sure.
So I'll pick a few questions that people have submitted. Again, a reminder for those of you that are tuning in live, if you have any questions, submit them in the Q&A tab, and we'll do our best to squeeze in as many questions as possible. I think we'll run a little bit over, but I think we've got Sam for a few extra minutes.
I've been talking for an hour already. I can't believe it.
So Sam, first question comes from Tony Wu, who wants to know what are the best ways to reach customers in multiple markets?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Tony, if you're talking about internationally, it's hard. I mean, it's hard and it's not hard. It depends on what your product is. For us, it was hard because the original growth of 28 was about people understanding who I was, and I don't have that same brand awareness in international markets. And it's weighing up your opportunity costs. So is there more growth or lower hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it, in my current market that I should be still spending my time and money on? Or have I started to exhaust that pool and I need to be looking elsewhere to continue to grow? For us, as I said before, there's so much growth here still in Australia. That's where we spend 95% of my 28ers are in Australia. So that's where we still spend the majority of our time and efforts. But when we do see opportunity, whether it be in New Zealand or the UK, we sort of spend the beauty of digital marketing is you can be so targeted. I can turn a Facebook campaign on in the UK in 3 minutes and cap my spend, see what kind of return I'm getting on my investment within a couple of hours, and very quickly learn, do I keep spending that money or am I getting a better return on my investment here in my current market? So I guess to answer your question, digital marketing is king when it comes to being able to expand into other markets and learn very, very quickly whether or not you're getting a good return on your investment.
Next question comes from someone who's been supporting the show for a very long time, Bryce Chi, who wants to know, looking back when you first started, what is one thing that you would have done differently?
That's a great question. I would have brought my team in-house earlier. I would have, at 2 years old, we still outsourced, or 2.5 years old, outsourced way too much. And we were hitting a plateau. We kind of got to 10,000 members and then we were seeing that level out. As soon as we got a great team in-house, we saw that line really start to take off again, and it hasn't slowed down since. So to know that we probably wouldn't have had that 12-month plateau if I'd had the courage and conviction to bring the team in-house earlier, I definitely would have done that.
Next submission is from an anonymous attendee who wants to know, how did you fund your development and marketing activities when you started 28? And did you get external funding to do so?
I lost you there for a second, mate. Sorry.
No, hello. Cool. I'll just re-ask.
Are you with me?
The question. Yep. Can you hear you?
Sure.
So the question submitted by an anonymous attendee who wants to know, how did you fund your development and marketing activities when you started 28? Did you get external funding to do so?
I tipped every dollar I had into this business to get it going. And I mean, both initially and then reinvesting everything back into it. So Look, I was fortunate enough that we didn't have to get any investment. And I don't know, someone had said to me very early on, never give equity away. That's sort of like the golden rule of business, if you can. And for us, it was kind of, well, for me, it was, do I run lean, bit more high risk, bit more stress, but do everything I can to be able to achieve that, and that's what we did. I don't think it's an interesting one. Did that hold us back from growing faster early on? Who knows? You would never really know. We definitely continued to dial up our marketing spend and see good returns on that. But the beauty of that was they were becoming paying subscribers, and we could tip that money back into the next month's spend and the next month's spend, and it kind of snowballed on from there. I think the thing where we were really lucky is it didn't take us 12 months to be turning a profit. It took us about one, which is just crazy. I understand that, and not real, obviously. I think if it had taken us 12 months, I absolutely would have got an investment. I probably wouldn't have had any other choice. But because we were turning a profit so quickly, it was very much right. Let's not worry about taking this profit off the table. Let's put it back into the business and build something really significant. I think particularly in this online health and fitness space, you don't want to be a flash in the pan. So many programs come and go just as quickly. There's probably only 4 or 5 in Australia that have stood the test of time, and we absolutely wanted to be one of those.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile sort of pointing out as well, when we spoke a little bit about, how you sort of approach the growth of your business and really focusing on the profitability. When you have external investors, particularly VC, there's just a very different model and pathway that you sort of put into your business as well. And so just being really, conscious and mindful of the type of business that you're trying to create as well is really important when, I guess the allure of spending someone else's money might potentially be there.
Yeah, which is the mistake I made with Gecko, and I definitely didn't want to make that mistake again.
Yeah. Next question is from Onella Care, who wants to know, have you considered doing research review evaluation of your program to look at health outcomes?
That's a great question, actually. Look, we monitor the data really closely from an engagement perspective, weight loss perspective, number of workouts being completed each week, number of recipes, what recipes are swapped. We learn from that data every single day, and it's a huge part of what we do. Actually tracking it right through to outside of the amount of exercise completed, the amount of weight lost, we probably haven't taken it to that next level. I definitely feel like that is going to be an integral development of our business from a B2B perspective. I really feel like there's going to be B2Bs that are going to want those reports. And we, for us, we have that data. It's how do we collate that data into a beautiful report that tells both the member and the B2B partner what they want. So yeah, it's a great point. Definitely something that's I'm sure on one of our to-do lists with many other things. But yeah, I love the idea. It's awesome.
And final question before we get people to sign off and get on with their day of Zoom calls, moving forward, is from Raveen Kulhadas, who wants to know, how do you think of pricing? And was it hard to get people to pay for an online program?
That's a great question. Look, for us, it's always about being a premium product in this space. We're $59 a month. And it's a bit of a crappy saying, but it's a bit of a sector where it seems like it's a race to the bottom. It's $5 a week, and I think people recognize that you get what you pay for. Both, we've got 3,000 recipes, we've got great workout diversity. It's a complete customized bespoke experience based on your goals, who you are, your behavior. And I think people quickly work out you get what you pay for. And then when you add to that the real-time support that we provide, either from me with daily videos or, in real time from a comprehensive customer service team that we call Sam's Crew, I think people identify that we're not a set and forget program, and you might pay $15 for a month for something that is like that. But if you really want support, that is money well spent. I think people view us more as a gym alternative, because you get your workouts, you get that you can do from home, you get your eating plan, you get your support. It really does give you everything a gym gives plus more. And at $59 a month, that's a very cheap gym membership. So I think for us, that has been where we've kind of lived from a pricing perspective. And I think as at-home workouts and digital fitness grows, people will see that that is a great alternative to getting a gym membership.
On that note, Sam, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning and for being so open in sharing your insights and experiences from 28 and your previous businesses. And a big thank you to all of you as well for tuning in live. Just as a quick reminder, this is part of a new format for the show where we go live at 8 a.m. every Tuesday. And next week we have Meena Radhakrishna, who is the co-founder of Different. But prior to this, she was employee number 20 at Uber. She was actually the very first product manager and helped build out the product for Uber that obviously scaled globally. And now she's a co-founder of Different, which has raised over $5 million from some of the leading VCs around the country, including Airtree Ventures as well. We go live Tuesday, 16th of June from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I'll send through the link to everyone that's interested in joining us live. Once again, Sam, thanks so much for taking the time. Hope you enjoyed the interview.
Loved it, mate. Have a great day, everyone. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to episode 115 of the Startup Playbook Podcast. As always, full show notes from this interview will be available at startupplaybook.co. I'll be back at 8 a.m. next Tuesday, the 16th of June, with another live episode. And my guest for episode 116 is Meena Radhakrishna, who joined Uber as employee number 20 and was their very first product manager. She is now the co-founder of PropTech startup Different, which since launching in 2017 is already managing over $700 million worth of residential properties, has over 30 staff, and has raised $4.8 million in funding from VC funds such as Airtree and PyLab Ventures. I'm really looking forward to that interview and hope that you can join us. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this interview, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.